Hi, I'm Niki, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to Reading to be read for September 2024. I've had a stellar month in reading so far, and it looks to get even better. I've been working hard to limit my choices to just the books that are highest priority, and it's paying off. Like, I've got so many good books in my face right now, I don't even know how to handle it. And that's even during a month that has been particularly chaotic for me. So we're lucky I'm talking about any books right now. First up, this marks the completion of Demon in White and Kingdom of Death by Christopher Ruocchio. This is book 3 and 4 in the Sun Eater series, respectively. This is my highest priority series going right now. Overall, I'm really enjoying it. The further I get into it, the more I believe you have to shut off your critical mind a bit and just go with it. Because there are very unconventional things going on in this series that I don't think would work a lot of times, but somehow he's pulling them off. Really weird things with pacing, really poor transitions, or brilliant transitions, depending on how you look at it. Demon in White, which looks like the biggest book in the series, I enjoyed most of it. He does a really good job of balancing political stuff and heavy action scenes, and that one for me had a good mix of both. There was a section near the end where I wasn't really on board with where we were going with the story, and it kind of lost my confidence a bit on the trajectory of the whole thing. But I thought, okay, maybe it's just a fluke. Just go with it. He'll bring it back home in the next book, which I hear is really good. So I read Kingdom of Death, and it was a lot more focused. But I wasn't into it at first. You ever pick up a series that you feel like you should be loving more than you are, and then you're enjoying it, it's passable, but you're not like, oh my gosh, I need to get online and talk to people about this. That's kind of where this one is at for me. It's an enjoyable series. I'm liking it a lot. If there weren't any booktube hype over it, I probably would be more satisfied, but I've got this baseline expectation that every book is going to be a solid 5 stars because of how much people rave about it. For me, book 1 and 2 were close to a 5 stars, and then from there it's turned into about a 4-star series, with some 5-star moments. Kingdom of Death struggled incredibly with pacing. It was interesting stuff we were with, but we spent way too long doing one thing, in my opinion. However, I do feel like stretching the storyline out so far in that regard was kind of an intentional thing to really ground you in this experience, and it'll kind of set a basis for what comes next in the rest of the series. So I see its purpose, but I felt like I was reading the same thing for a really long time. And then near the end, it picked back up again and just kind of careened, whatever. So I've gotten mixed feelings about it. The things that I could criticize about the series are also the things I could praise that it's doing well or unconventionally or making it unique. And as far as I can tell, most of it does seem intentional, which gives it a pass. Both of these, I think, are coming in at 4 out of 5 stars. And I'm excited to continue. Like I said, this is still my top priority series at the moment. With my patron Dave, I read How to Rule an Empire and Get Away with It. This is book 2 in the Siege trilogy, book 1 being 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City, which is still my favorite book that I've read this year so far. It was absolutely phenomenal. While that one was on this massive pedestal and was pure magic, so good, this one was just a normal book. It was okay. I'm giving it a 4-star because the act of reading this book, and I love the character immersion, and there are still some writing tools, particularly in how he's constructing this trilogy as a whole, that I'm just eating up. I think it is so cool what he is doing with this series. But as far as main character and plot and humor, none of that stuff really sparked anything for me in this book. It was good, but it wasn't amazing, but I still enjoyed my time with it enough to give it a 4-star. I can't wait to see what he does in the next one. And in fact, I think I'm currently reading a lot of Tchaikovsky books and kind of exploring everything that man has out. Once I'm done with that, I think Parker might be my next deep dive author. I'm just really excited about some of the stuff I've read so far. So if you like Joe Abercrombie, 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City is great. It's like grim, dark elements, but with this amazing humor that just balances it perfectly. Yeah, love it. 4 stars. For our genre deep dive challenge, I read Behind the Throne by KB Wagers. I thought this was going to be more of a space exploration, gunslinging, Firefly type of book, but it was a political intrigue story set in a sci-fi world, which I also like, but it didn't scratch the right itch. There are a couple of tropes that you're introduced to right at the beginning of the book that are then done better than I've seen them done in a really long time. So the author gets kudos for keeping it interesting. I wish the plot had been less simple, a little more in-depth, because if it is a political intrigue, that aspect of it should be spot on. And it was just okay. It was a fun read. And I think the star of the show were probably the characters, even though they didn't have a lot of depth either. So this is kind of on the verge of a snack sci-fi. A little bit more robust than that, but not by much. But I am definitely interested in continuing. I don't remember how many stars I gave it during the genre deep dive project video, but right now I'm thinking it's about a 3-star, 3 out of 5. For Read Burn Hoard, I picked up a Mercedes Lackey, part of the Queen's Own trilogy. I read Arrows of the Queen. It's book 1 in the Valdemar series. Valdemar. I should know this. I just spent a whole month on it. And this is close to the first book written if you're going either publication or chronological order. And it was a lot of fun. I was expecting it to be kind of dated, dry classic fantasy, not very engaging, but it was really fun. Now don't get me wrong, it's definitely not a modern fantasy, but it had a lot of good elements. I liked the main characters. There's a magic school element, always love that. There's a particular focus in this series on white horses, and I'm not really a horse girl, but I was picturing these being like wingless dragons because they have a lot of the same properties as a book with a lot of dragons in it. So that kind of made them a little more cool to me. They're not horses, they're just like a version of dragons. Hey, whatever you have to tell yourself to enjoy a book more. Had some good training sequences, great pacing, a short little fun read. So I read 1 of 3, and I'm hoping to pick up the rest of the trilogy sometime soon. It was an absolute delight. I'm not sure how to rate it, probably 3.5 out of 5 stars. Like, as fun as it did not have a lot of depth, but as a snack, it was tasty. And finally, I picked up The Minimalist Way. And I don't even know the author because this is one of those random ones I bought on an Audible sale and decided to pick up on a whim because I'm working towards reducing the number of outstanding Audible books I have to read in my digital library. Picked this one up on a whim, had very low expectations, and to my surprise, it was one of the better ones that I've read. A lot of minimalist books are either primed for beginners or better for those who have been doing it for a while and need some extra support or emphasis on things. This was a great balance of both. She had such depth of knowledge in these tiny little paragraphs that if you're a seasoned minimalist, you could spend entire months focusing on just one little thing that she talked about in here. And if you're new to minimalism, it gives a really good roadmap on some of the foundational things to focus on to help get you to where you want to be. I really loved her philosophy on everything. It was in line with the stuff that drives me as a minimalist. You wouldn't be able to tell by my library. I understand this. But minimalism to me is a way of life. It's a living with intentionality. And I am doing that in every aspect of my life. And the library is kind of the last frontier. Hence my Read, Burn, Hoard project and all of these other things that I'm focusing on. It's not about the number of books, but it is about having the things around you that you value the most. Books are so hard because you have to go through each one individually and evaluate it on whether or not you think it'll be a good book. You have to do a lot of research on it. It takes a lot of time. In any case, I would consider myself a minimalist, and I particularly enjoyed her small section on mental clutter, like becoming a minimalist mentally and how to clear some of the stuff that's vying for your attention in your head. Like, that was cool. I haven't seen anybody else talk about that too much. I don't know how to rate that. For me, it was like a 4 or 5 star read. Really good. Now let's talk about currently reading. On brand, I'm continuing with Ashes of Man. I'm about halfway through this one. Enjoying it. I've heard a lot of people say this one is kind of a lull in the series, and I can see why. It's a lot of talky, but it is moving the plot forward in a meaningful way, so I'm enjoying that aspect of it. And at this point in the series, I'm just going with it. I am really grateful that I'm reading a lot of these back to back because there's always those nuanced plot points and minor characters that understanding exactly what's going on involves remembering everything that happened. And I read so many books that if any kind of time elapses between books in a series, I feel like I lose at least 20% of the enjoyment that I could have had in it had I read it closer to when I read the other one. So the fact that I'm continuing this one right away makes me incredibly happy. I'm finally orchestrating my reading life to support myself in being more intentional and focused with my reading. And this one's on par with the other ones as far as rating goes. Halfway through it, it's still about a 4-star read for me. I don't know that I love the direction the entire series is going. I think what I had in my head was a lot more dazzling than what is actually happening, but I do remember how excited I was at the prospect of discovery, and I'm still in that budding thing where I'm like, I can't wait to see what he's gonna do, and that's exciting. And for Patreon Book Club, we are reading Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. I'm at about chapter 10, and it's really funny. I had to start the book over again because I was kind of reading it here and there between other things. I wasn't really mentally focused on it. And then something happened about chapter 10 where I'm like, whoa, this has Cosmere implications. I really need to start over and ground myself in this book and really bask in it for a bit. So that's what I did. So I've read the first 10 chapters of this twice, and you ever have those weeks where you know you're missing when you're reading because your brain is just on other things? It's kind of where I'm at right now. So I had missed a couple of things at the beginning of the book that kind of jarred I wasn't grounded in the story. Things were still a little confusing and they shouldn't have been. Sanderson's really going for it now as far as like tying things together in different worlds and kind of making his Cosmere place like a tangible thing instead of this enigma. And I am enjoying this quite a bit. I would recommend maybe not picking it up until after you're up to date with the Stormlight. As of this point, Rhythm of War was the last book out. And maybe even the short story Dawn Shard, which, by the way, is one of my single favorite things I've read by Sanderson. It's a novella, and it was so cool. This will be my second secret project from Sanderson. Tress of the Emerald Sea was an absolute delight. It surprised me how much I enjoyed that one, even though it's a Sanderson, and the baseline is always incredibly high. For some reason, I thought they weren't going to be as good, but so far, they've been awesome. But this one, maybe consider it Stormlight, like 4.75. I don't know. I don't know how invested you want to be in the Cosmere or in Sanderson's works. I think it works well as a standalone, but there are some things here that have implications from the Stormlight series that, to me, feel spoilerish. But I'm very touchy when it comes to spoilers, so take that with a grain of salt. Okay, let's talk about my TBR. One thing led to another, and I didn't ever get around to reading Phoenix by Stephen Bruce. It's book whatever in the Vlad Talcho series. I mentioned this one last month, and it's an awesome, fun little short fantasy series. Each book is only like a couple hundred pages. They're really good. And so I thought I can fit that in anytime during the month. I don't need to make a special date priority for it. And that's, yeah, if it's not written, it's not real. I never got around to it. I would like to finally pick up Winter Lost by Patricia Briggs. Usually I hound for digital arcs of this series. I have not missed a publication date in as long as I can remember. So I am behind on a Mercy series, which is not acceptable. So hopefully I'll be picking this one up soon as well. It's one of my favorite ongoing urban fantasy series. And my favorite thing about it is, even at this point in the series, there are still so many enigmas of character that I can't wait to dig a little deeper into. And you know she's gonna. She'll tease. She'll give you a little bit of information, just enough to keep your interest spiked. And then you come back again and you get a little bit more information, and they're always packaged in these fun little mystery. Superb. And the last couple have been especially good, so I have high hopes for this one. Starting today, a buddy read for Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. And considering I'm in the middle of a couple other tomes, I'm not sure I'm ready for this yet. Holy cow. But you know, this looks really big, but audiobook is only 25 hours, whereas the Stormlight book is about this big and it's like 41 hours. So really thick paper. But don't get me wrong, it's still going to take me like half a month to read this thing. I know nothing about this, but it has a dragon on the cover and I am intrigued. It's gotten enough really good ratings on BookTube that I think this book and I are primed to get along. We shall see. I would like to continue my journey with Christopher Racchio's Dregs of Empire. This is between book 5 and 6, and I don't particularly want to read this one physically or buy it, so I'm at the mercy of being like 5th in line at the library. So whether or not it comes in this month is out of my hands. I don't have a very high chance of getting it, but if it does, I will read it. And then very excitingly, my patrons and I are finishing out the Dandelion Dynasty series with book 4, Speaking Bones. Book 3 was not a complete story within itself. It was like all of the foundation for this book, which is going to be the finale, which this author has dazzled me so many times throughout the series that I just can't wait. This is one of those where it's taken us probably the course of an entire year to read, and I still remember things that happened in the first book. I still remember characters vividly. Like, talk about amazing pacing. This guy slows things down enough to really ground you with all these characters. They have such depth that they become incredibly memorable. And novelty, I think, is one of the reasons why you can remember certain books over others. And this book is just so unique that things really stick in your head. And, oh man, I could go on, but I really love it so far, and I can't wait to finally see what happens, like how it ends, where it goes from here. Is this man working on any other series? Because I want to read all the things. Yet again, I forgot to talk about my Audible 3-for-1 challenge when I was filming this video. It's hard to get into new habits sometimes, but even though I keep forgetting to talk about it, I am still actively running the challenge. So just to give you a heads up on numbers, when I started this challenge about a month ago, I had 285 unfinished titles in my Audible library. And as you can see here on my little tracker, I have read 5 books, but I have also purchased like 4. And all of my purchases so far have been to support a buddy read or a project that was already going on. And I'm okay with that. I am just fine purchasing books that I'm going to be reading immediately. It's when I spend money on things and then don't touch them for like 5 years that irritates me, and that's what I'm trying to get away from. I mean, ideally, I would be reading more of my backlog as well as the new titles that I purchase, and that's going to take some time, but that's kind of what I'm working on. And I have decided for now that when I earn a purchase, like when I read 3 books and get to purchase 1, if I have purchased a book for a buddy read, I'm going to count that against myself. Because honestly, unless I'm reading it immediately, I really don't need to be buying anything. It's kind of how I look at it. So for my first 3-for-1, I read Martian, Kingdom of Death, and Red Shirts, and I used my purchase credit to count towards the Martian purchase. Number 2, I read The Minimalist Way, which is a backlist one, go me, and How to Rule an Empire and Get Away with It. And I am very close to finishing Ashes of Man by Rockio, which will be my 3rd and final book for that wrap-up. The thing about it being, though, Ashes of Man I should have gotten from my library, but the wait was too long, so I bought a copy. And actually, Red Shirts is also a backlist one. The only thing I've done over the last month that could be considered a little iffy, I purchased Starter Villain by John Scalzi. It was a daily deal for $1.99, and about a week before that deal had popped into my inbox, my patrons had already initiated a buddy read for it, and we will be reading it probably sometime in October. That one I'm okay with because there's a commitment for it. There are a couple people signed up to read it, and I saved myself like $8. The way the math works on all of that is I started at 285 at the beginning of the project. My check-in number right now is 284. I'll take any progress I can get. That's a lot of books. I was going to start a reread of Rhythm of War this month in preparation for the new Stormlight book coming out in December. But as I was compiling books for this video, I realized, no, there's no way you're going to be able to cram in yet one more thing. Because on top of all of this, I am reading a Read Burn Hoard book, which is also a tome, and then at least 2 for our new patron challenge that I haven't announced yet. So I got a busy schedule. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it through all of this. But they're all high priority, so it's going to be fun either way. Thanks for joining me on this one, though. I want to know what books have been really exciting you lately. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you on my next one. Bye.